Dobro došli u novu epizodu Netokracija Podcasta. Ja sam Jan Brkan, osnivač Netokracije. I danas ću pričati više na engleskom. Sa mnom je jedan zanimljiv gost, Boakes, koji je novi direktor za UK za Infinum. Tehnološku firmu, tehnološku agenciju iz Zagreba i Hrvatske koju sigurno znate po njihovim projektima, znači od primjerice Productiva, Porsche, Digitala i tako dalje, ali danas pričamo o tome kako je to otvoriti londonski UK ured jedne tehnološke firme poput Infinuma sa Jonathanom koji ima jako puno iskustva u tome. Kao i uvijek, subscribe-te se putem svih mogućih kanala koje možete naći, od YouTube-a, Spotify-a, pa ima podcast platformi još i više nego inače, ali subscribe-te se da dobijete još ovakvih epizoda u novoj sezoni Netokracija Podcasta. Ali bacimo se na posao. Jonathan, welcome to Netokracija Podcast. How are you doing this morning?
Thank you very much. Great to be here, and I'm doing very well, thank you.
It's very nice to have you here and live. We're not doing this over Skype or Zoom or anything.
Absolutely.
Yeah, is it your first time in Zagreb?
It is my first time in Zagreb, yes. Arrived here yesterday, had a great day with the team and a great evening with some of the guys. So yes, it's been a whirlwind so far.
So just to get to know, so obviously our audience knows Infinum. They know some of the co-founders, maybe Tommy Salzar, Nikolaj Prać, and so on. They've been a part of the community for years and years and years. But let's introduce you. Who is Jonathan Boakes?
Okay, so always a tough question, but potted history, is that the sort of thing you're going for? So obviously studied. I did I suppose you call it a master's degree in publishing, and so that you had a choice there to go into sort of book publishing or magazine publishing. I chose magazine publishing mainly because I heard the parties were going to be a lot better.
For those in our audience who have been to the media industry festival, Weekend Media Festival, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So then I did a little bit of work at a magazine company called Dennis Publishing that they publish magazines like Maxim and Auto Express and some others. And I ended up working in the computer games part of that. So I did that for a couple of years. Really, really interesting. A lot of parties, a lot of trips to the States, going to this big games conference called E3 that was always really, really enjoyable. And then I got offered a job at the BBC, and it was to go and work for BBC Worldwide, which is the commercial arm of BBC. But everything was kind of interlinked, and essentially my role very much focused on the brand Top of the Pops, which is a kind of a music show that you might have heard of. So my role there was kind of to try and help them do everything. I mean, obviously, this is best part of 20 years ago, so it's kind of, digital was pretty kind of nascent in the way that we talk about it today. And, we're talking about creating CD-ROMs, if anybody remembers those, and putting that...
Yeah, when you were saying, like, digital, I was, like websites or whatever. Oh, no, CD-ROMs.
Yeah,
my Mac doesn't even have a CD drive anymore.
Come on, right? No way. So it is a bit of a step back, but I suppose the reason I say it, I suppose, is because, it's where my heart has always been in terms of digital, but it's always kind of a foot in both camps. So, I really liked the sort of tangibleness of magazines and everything that kind of goes with that. But also, there was also something you could pack a load more into the digital format, all the extras, all the behind the scenes content. We were taking that from the show and building that in and doing that sort of thing. So I was there for a few years. Then I moved over to another music magazine called the New Musical Express, or NME. I was there for about 7 years. And again, I was doing lots of different roles there, including helping to sort of launch the TV channel, the radio station, various other bits and pieces. I suppose one of the final jobs there, I had a lot of tours with a lot of the bands, I should add as well. But one of the final things that I did was sort of help with the mobile strategy. And that mobile strategy, again, still fairly early, and compared to what it is, today, completely different.
Was that in the era of smartphones already, or?
So we were talking dumb smartphones, so those kind of really early. I mean, everything was a complete nightmare to work on, and
so pre-iPhone.
Oh, way pre-iPhone, yeah, pre-iPhone. But I suppose the iPhone was probably just around the corner. Everybody could see which way we were going. And I ended up working with a lot of different vendors, and after a while, one of them, and in fact, a vendor we didn't choose to work with long term, but they said, actually, we've just picked up a round of funding, and we are opening some European offices, Amsterdam, Berlin, London. Would you like to be, to basically lead this London office? And this was in a world of, what do you call it? What the hell is it called? Ad serving.
Oh, okay.
So the ad serving business is not really a business I knew masses about. And I kind of describe it as a 0.0% business, and the biggest competitors were going to be Google and Microsoft.
Close to publishing, at least from a commercial point of view.
From that point of view, it was really about sort of clicks, ads being served, creative. I mean, the way I kind of convinced myself to do it was that it was creative. There were new ad formats being put together, and I was kind of helping to do that. The company was incredibly innovative in what they were doing, but you can never really compete at that level against, as soon as you bring out a new format, DoubleClick or whatever they were called would just do it the next day and kind of copy that. But a lot of people didn't want to go with those. They wanted a sort of a boutique alternative, and that's what we were able to offer. So I did that for a few years, and in the end, that was sort of sold to a US company. And then I actually took a little bit of time out because I thought, what do I want to do? And I really didn't know. I knew I didn't want to do more of that, and there was a lot of opportunity to
Were you tired already of the how the market is moving fast or
well,
stuff like
sorry,
that?
I probably skipped over that bit. The reason I made the jump from, I suppose, traditional publishing to what I would consider more of my mobile career was because I could see that all of those magazines were starting to dip in sales. And I just thought, listen, I've always kind of pushed myself into doing things that I haven't always known, or there is no end result or end game because it hasn't been written yet. And I kind of like that story of let's kind of do this ourselves or myself or however that would be. And so I sort of jumped ship to do that, but I was slightly disheartened by my experience in that sort of ad serving business because I didn't find it very fulfilling in a creative way, which sounds a little bit like I'm some sort of artist, which I'm not saying I am, but it was just, I just felt slightly unfulfilled. So I took a small amount of time out, and I suppose I was just having a lot of conversations with people, which I think for me, that's the way to do it, because it's like, oh, that's interesting. My friend just told me the other day about this. And that's exactly what happened. And a good friend of mine, who I actually went to school with, and this is back when I was about 7 or 8. And then I went to a different school. He went to a different school. And obviously back then, this is pre-Facebooks and everything else, and pen pals. We weren't pen pals. And so didn't see him for maybe 10, 15 years. And then on my second day at the BBC, I just heard him shout, "Boakesy!" across this kind of massive floor. And I'm still new and thinking, oh my God, what is it? And then I recognized him straight away. I was like, oh my God, I haven't seen you for years. And we sort of picked up a friendship. Anyway, I was just talking to him sort of years later. And he said, actually, I know somebody who's talking to this app development agency, and they're actually looking for a kind of a sales guy. And I was like, well, I didn't really know much about apps, really. I think by that point, I had a couple on my phone and that sort of thing. And so I went and had a chat with them, and they were asking me these questions. Are you a farmer or a hunter? I had absolutely no idea what they were talking about. And I was sort of, yeah, I mean, hunter? And so it just kind of transpired. I think we were both a bit thrown by the interview, and but I guess they didn't have a better option. So they kind of called me back, and I think then we just started talking about more. And the way they explained it to me was they had basically just picked up the contract to create the mobile apps for, I'm just going to say, a very well-known UK bank. And
Lloyd's.
Hey, well, for example,
For example.
And they had pretty much a sea, like 30, 40 developers, all in place, all ready to go. It was probably going to be about an 18-month engagement. And the problem with it, of course, is and because this is the way that people were thinking that back then, but I immediately could see as soon as you launch that, it's going to be out of date.
Yeah.
So we can kind of come back to why you'd never do it like that now. But what they needed was a sales guy to basically say, okay, we've got this proposition set up. Now let's try and find some new customers. So that's what I went in and did. And it wasn't easy, but we picked up a lot of energy companies, healthcare companies, various like national lottery type companies, that sort of thing. So fairly good heavyweight companies. And it was a great experience for me. And I was learning, and there was a couple of really awful moments, actually. I mean, an incredibly nice CTO who I once went to see at at an energy company, and we were just talking. And the truth is, I was always learning as I was sort of going, but there was so much information to take on board, it was impossible. And I was learning about the market I was going to talk to and about, and I was learning about the intricacies of development and process and everything else. And I'd made some mistake about a Kanban or something, and he just stopped me and said, "Listen, it's quite clear you have absolutely no idea what you're talking about, but I really quite like you. And let's just carry on, but just drop all of the nonsense and we'll get along."
So he called you out?
Yeah, 100% called me out, which was exactly the right thing to do. And so we ended up working together. And in fact, he's a guy, not to loop it back to this, but he's a guy that I've actually stayed very much in contact with. I've worked with him on 2 separate engagements at 2 separate energy companies. And he's not a mentor, but he's definitely a guy that I would go to. And in fact, I did go to before I took this role, and just had a quick chat about it with him. Anyway.
What did you ask him about this role, if you can share?
Yeah, just because where I was previous to this, I'd been for about 7 years. So different to that other one. And so I just thought, plus I have a family now. And, so everything sort of changes in that sense. My responsibilities change to an extent, and motivations change, risk levels, change.
As a dad of a 5-month-old baby boy now, I can completely relate.
Right. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. So my boy was probably about 5 as I was sort of trying to make that 5 months as I was trying to make that decision. So you would understand. My daughter's about 4. And so, so I just said to him, and he said, "Look, truth be told, if you weren't already going to be doing this, we wouldn't be talking about it. So you're going to go and do it. But what you want me to tell you is why you should do it, and blah, blah, blah." And it was quite good, because he was right. I'd probably had already made my decision, but there were a few mitigating factors and certainly some complications that I needed to work through, and which I did. But
does this go back to what you said about pushing yourself to do new stuff?
Yeah,
and stuff
there's
like
an element of that, because there's no doubt about it. I could have stayed doing what I was doing where I was, and as I say, I've been there 7 years. It was a very similar setup. When I joined that company, I was approached by a couple of Danish guys who sort of had found me on LinkedIn, I suppose, and we had a good few chats. And in the end, I came over, and there was a sort of a very small kind of London operation, but the guy, he was one of the Danish founders, but he wanted to go back to Denmark and have a family and that sort of thing. And so it was really a question of trying to build that team and that operation pretty much from scratch, and doing that. And so did that for a couple of years. We grew, got some big accounts, and they were at a stage where they were just building sort of startups, and these or propositions for startups. But of course, half of these unfortunately didn't make it out the door. They were actually in a shared co-working space, and so they had a queue of people saying, "Hey, you guys make apps? Great, because we need some help on this and that." And so one of the first things I did was say, "Look, as much as this is amazing, loads of these ideas are fantastic, you'll never get the kind of traction, and you're never going to keep your team motivated and happy if they're not seeing what they're building, really." So I just kind of sort of said, "Look, we got to put the foot down and say, really what we want is sort of enterprise clients." And that was the hardest thing, going out to. I remember this story actually. It's also a great guy, but another CTO for a prestigious insurance company. UK insurance company. I suppose I could say it doesn't matter, but anyway, I went in and with a really good colleague, ex-colleague of mine. He's now a CTO himself somewhere else, but we went in and said something along the lines of whatever the pitch was, blah blah blah. You need us to do this, and he just said something like, "This company's been around over 100 years. What do you think you could come in here and tell us how to do something?" And I think I just said something along the lines of, oh God, I wish I'd remember what I said now, but something along the lines of, if you'd have said 7 years ago that a third of your audience would be using mobile phones, you'd have laughed me out of the room. But actually, that is more than the case now. And if you can't work out where they're going to be in another 7 years, then, you probably won't be here, or something quite provocative to him in that sense. And he just went, yeah, you know what, you might be right on that actually. And then we ended up working together on a couple of things and building out a few products and stuff like that. So I think it's just, you know, there's a certain boldness I think you need in this role, and but also people need to hear you believe in what you're selling. I think is a big part of it. So.
Okay, so that's great, and now we can maybe go into what you're doing now, and that's you're the managing director of Infinum UK. And when I was talking to Bojan, who is the marketing director in Croatia, he said, okay, your Infinum is going to change their offerings as well, expand them, stuff like that. So you've worked in the app market before. You've worked for digital agencies, obviously, for clients. How is what you've done that different from what you're going to be doing now? And also, how is the market different? What are clients' expectations? And interestingly enough, when you said that in that previous role that you would say no to startups because the team wouldn't be motivated to see devs go out. For example, I would, in the Croatian market, consider, you don't want to work with enterprise because you're not going to see the app go out. You might work on it. But,
that's fair. Yeah. But they will pay the bill.
Yeah.
And that means then that gives you freedom, flexibility to work on other type of projects. And but I'll go back to the first question, I suppose, which is, first of all, what Infinum have been doing over the last 16 plus years is an amazing.
Has it been 16 years?
Apparently so, yeah. So exactly. Oh.
I'd drink to that if I had some.
I think we did last night. But so amazing what they've achieved, obviously. But the whole market has matured. And I think I keep kind of repeating myself in this. There's an assumed knowledge that if we are having the conversation, if I'm having a conversation with the CTO or whoever it would be, there's an assumed knowledge that, of course we can do the development, talk about stack, talk about platforms, languages. That's almost a given. There's a sort of a competency level that's expected and understood. But where I think the real sweet spot is, and certainly by the people that are, because it will be a CTO or a chief digital officer that will be going back in to try and make the business case on our behalf. And they need artifacts and assets to do that. And a lot of that will be, the guys can do the development, but really what they want to talk about is the product strategy and how the product management, product ownership, and that sort of thing. And I think that's that sort of strategic insight, analytics, as well as design, obviously, they're the things that people kind of really want to get hold of, and they can show them internally to the various stakeholders who have got like 5 minutes in a quarterly board meeting, to capture their attention and say, actually, and then it's about throughout the engagement, just drop in enough sort of show and tell bits and pieces that they can kind of stay engaged and basically continue writing checks. And so I think, because there's a lot of talk of design, a lot of talk of so design, prototyping, a lot of talk about feasibility. Can we build this? Okay, that's great. But if there isn't a true sort of business case or business return or the value, so those three things in my mind need to happen simultaneously. So we talk a lot about 5-day sprints, design sprints, and that's great. And you can have solution architects within those and working together to produce a great outcome. But unless there is a defined business case attributed to that as well, then in my mind, it's a failure.
Looking at the Croatian market, Infinum and other agencies, not just in Croatia, but across the region, start as outsourcing shops, right? Dev shops. You could get like a dozen, 24, 100 developers and basically sell their time to clients. This has evolved, as you mentioned, toward design and product and so on, to a point where the talent. I remember when you mentioned 16 years ago. I remember when Infinum, I think like 13 years ago or something, was working on the not even smartphones. I remember them working on games for dumb phones, Java games that were their first projects, including a game with the Duracell rabbit, as I remember.
Okay, right.
So really back. And again, times have changed. It's not enough to have like the little bunny and develop the game. You need to have everything else. Is that talent that you'll be developing in the UK, or is that something that can also be developing in Croatia if Infinum as a company needs it?
Yeah,
because that's one of the challenges that we're seeing this year, right? Everyone's talking about, even we had an event a few weeks ago about like growth and stuff like that. And the state of the market here is that you don't have that talent, right?
Are you saying you don't have that talent because it's gone to the UK? Or saying you
No,
don't
I'm
have
saying
because
that there's never been that talent here. It's always been because of the outsourcing. It's always been US, UK, and other companies finding back-end talent here, but it's never been a market where you have ingrained like product talent, growth, and so on. There are some people, definitely, but I'm just interested in do you think that companies like Infinum need to be realistic and like find that kind of talent in places like London, or can you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd sort of take a more of a borderless view on it. I think you need, just as you need sort of domain knowledge from an industry, you need cultural kind of insight for, you know, what might be right here might not be right in the US or in the UK. But I also think if you have a product team that say, for example, those three places here, UK and US, and those guys are talking, they will learn more off each other in that sense. And so I think those roles should be wherever you would look to have it. But I suppose my point is, if you think about, you've got sort of delivery centers, which is kind of, I suppose, what you're driving towards, and then revenue generating centers. And I suppose what I mean by that is client-facing teams. And it, you know, there is an existing, and you have client-facing teams here, but it's, I suppose, the expectation level. So in London, there is an expectation that a client-facing team would include a solution architect, a product manager, possibly, you know, a design as well, and a sales guy person coming in, and that's what's expected, because that's what they're looking to buy, so that they can create that solution there, or, you know, map it out to an extent in that meeting. And so it's important that we have those roles in London, but it's not to say that they're not equally important here. And I think as the role and the approach to it all matures, there'll be an expectation that is, it might not be there today, but it probably is. And, you know, you go to certain more forward-thinking businesses, or businesses that have more of a global footprint, and they're seeing that elsewhere. And I just think, I don't see it as here or there. I see it as the market evolves, matures. People, you'll always have people at the forefront of it, and they will be hopefully going back and sharing that insight. It's the same when we do this sort of the agile coaching with you know, businesses. We want them to share that knowledge as much as possible, because that will make it easier for us to go in and talk to those people, or to, you know, other teams at, you know, at a level that makes sense to us and them next time we're in. So yeah, I mean, communication of those ideas and those kind of disciplines, I think is key.
How do you think, like, how have client expectations in London changed as far as like apps and websites and stuff like that? What does Infinum need to do to really like be able to offer the right solution?
I mean, it kind of goes back a bit to what I'm saying. It's about creating the right team for the right solution. Yeah, Infinum is lucky. They have an enormous talent pool, and what that means is, you know, we can have a very early conversation about what the right stack for this is, pull that team together. We have, you know, product strategists over in London who are sort of, or UK, that are, you know, meeting with the clients and trying to translate or untangle what that challenge is, but they're then able to sort of translate that back to the guys here. And I think that's, you know, it's certainly not anything new, but I think if you have the right people doing it with the right approach and are all motivated, then I think that's, you know, it's a winning formula.
Talking about the right people, I'm interested, like there are, I'm sure a lot of companies that are thinking, okay, we might also need to go to London or the UK in general to expand. We've seen some Croatian startups like Farseer and Picator, their founders, moving to London in order to find new clients. What would you advise those founders when they are moving in terms of just like being effective while they're there? Because we've seen, and I personally seen a lot of founders like, oh, I'm going to London for 6 months, and then they go and they don't really manage to do anything. What would you advise those founders? And also, what do you think that they should know about the UK and the London market that they might not understand from
difficult to know what they don't know, obviously. But the
I mean,
obvious,
you work with, as you said, Dutch founders and stuff like that.
Yeah. The obvious thing is, there's a massive community in London, so tech community, design community, product community, all of those sorts of things. And there's probably something you could be at every night. And I think what people want to know is, what's it like where you are? They already know what it's like where they are. So it's about sharing ideas and, and of course, then, you very quickly pick up what it's like because you're talking to people all the time. So, it kind of goes back to that. And now, of course, that we have this thaw and people are able, like we are today, to actually kind of meet face to face, then I think it's very important that that happens. What was the second part of the question?
What would you recommend to them when? So they want to expand to the UK or London. Should they go with a strategy of hiring someone local like Infinum has, or if they're a startup, so they might not have the budget or something?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think hiring someone like myself, of course, you immediately open up to the network, the experience that they have. They are able to help finesse the message or the proposition. So I think that is, useful, because what you don't want to enter a market with a sort of slightly clunky proposition because one word is not right, and people will immediately kind of switch off from that sort of thing. So, but I think you could, there's a sea of consultants or almost one-man bands that could kind of help you on a sort of consultancy level. I think that's actually possibly especially if you are just sort of dipping your toe in the water to find out, because it's not like Infinum have not been in the UK before. They've been engaged there for some time and have some good clients there. But if you're going over there for the first time and you don't want, or you don't have the budget to kind of commit to that sort of thing, it would make sense to be able to tap into somebody's network. And there are a lot of sort of freelance consultants that would able to do that and can immediately sort of open up doors, set up meetings. We touched earlier on in terms of the sort of shared sort of workspaces and stuff like that. And just because of the pandemic and how everybody seems to be a lot of people migrating out of London. So the deals that you can have on those kind of places, I think.
So co-working or co-living and stuff
or
like
any
that.
offices, or co-living. And I think, so there's loads of opportunities there to have. But I think that the biggest thing is probably just, getting right into the scene, and which I'm sure all these guys will be doing anyway.
What do you think the real challenges are? Is it getting the meetings then for CE companies? Is it understanding the business culture maybe? Because what I've seen is a lot of founders maybe educated, but like we're shown for example, an American business culture, right? So is it the right one to go to a scene like London, or how to like?
I think it is very different, and the problem is it's difficult for me because I guess I've kind of
Is it about watching only Fools and Horses?
It's funny that came up last night. I didn't quite know how popular that was, but
it's very popular.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Yeah, but it's not a comedy. I think it's like. It's very social. And so, but that's what I mean in the sense of you go to those sort of, my first step would be going to some of those meetups, for example. You then meet someone and then you say, well, okay, could we go for a coffee or a beer or a dinner? And then they would say, actually, there is a guy over at X company that I think might be interested. So you could never think, I'm going to go to this meetup and I'm going to get a client or a new piece of business. I'm not saying anybody would think that, but you have to earn it and work through the layers of what it is and build that trust and rapport with various people, be consistent with your message, obviously be friendly. And, I think actually it came up again last night in the sense of, and the difference, I think a good connection between Croatian and English people, to say, or UK people, is a love of sarcasm. And I think that kind of wry or dry sense of humor is what a lot of companies are offering. I'm not necessarily talking about the startups that have a specific proposition, but a lot of companies, certainly in the sort of services business, a lot of people are going to be offering the same thing. So the question is, do you, as the client, there's 3 of them there, do you want to work with that one for 18 months, that one for 18 months, or that one? And you're going to be spending a lot of time with these people. And actually, you'd much rather, if the quality of work is consistent, then you'd much rather go with the people that actually you're going to have a bit of a laugh with over the course of those long days, and be it on calls, be it in workshops and that sort of thing. And I certainly know that. And if I'm looking at various vendors and stuff like that, as long as the tech is equal, then that's the way I would go.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of founders and companies don't think about. They think about, okay, we need to have the right tech stack, we need to have the right developer, designers, the brands, stuff like that. This all seems very soft, especially maybe to technical founders.
Yeah.
Right? We need sales, but it's not about that.
And it's true. And I suppose it's only through experience or, comfort of knowing that sales will come. But of course, you need that bedrock of sales to understand, yeah, this is going to be a success, and we can do this, and now I can employ more people, and now I can relax into it. And when you're relaxed, everything is better, and everything is a more natural and authentic, and you come across more credible because you are who you are, and that's what it is. Yeah, the difficulty is when you start having more kind of management consultant jargon thrown in, and you have that kind of view of people that they are there to say whatever it is they're going to say. They knew what they were going to say before they came in, and they don't really listen as much, and it sort of dehumanizes the whole experience for everybody. And and I've seen it, and I've seen people kind of get turned off by it, clients, I mean. And so I think the job is just to listen, and not to wait to when to make a gag. I don't mean it like that, but there should just be a natural kind of conversation about these things, and tech is woven into that. But for me, it's always has been, it's about people and how we can spend some time together.
About spending time together with clients and maybe even getting those potential leads. So do you think that, especially for services businesses like Infinum, is marketing, especially content marketing, creating content like blogs or YouTube podcasts, stuff like this, something where it does help attract clients, or does it really rely on sales? Because looking at it from a media point of view, for example, in Croatia, while I know that our blogs are very good for creating awareness, I also know that, for example, our own success has been based on really having a very proactive sales approach.
Yeah, it is both, really.
I'm asking, sorry to interrupt, I'm asking because one of the founders of the companies I mentioned, his strategy, because he was very successful in creating a LinkedIn strategy in Croatia, becoming a top LinkedIn influencer.
Oh, right.
His idea is, okay, I'm going to do the thing that I'm good at, LinkedIn, in the UK.
Yeah.
Do you think that's something that'll work?
For me, I mean, unfortunately, you see the same noise people on LinkedIn, and for me, I just skip over them. It's like I'm not interested really what they're saying, because actually they are just saying the same thing, and they're broadcasting, they're not listening. That's my view of it. The success, or the most certainly best response, I think, that I've had in that sort of thing is creating content, but going out to CTOs, CDOs, whatever it would be, and asking them a question, pick a topic about creating teams, digital virtual teams, whatever it is, and going and asking somebody from maybe enterprise, somebody from a sort of a mid-level, somebody from a startup, and talking to those people, getting their opinion and shaping a piece of content, around it, and then maybe sending it out for more opinion to people before you kind of release it. And then, there's all these questions about should you gate it, not gate it. There's so much content, so many white papers, and you've got, big fours or others sort of dropping that all the time. So for me, that's one way of doing it. And then the other way would be, say you're talking about a specific sector, and I know we've been talking a lot about automotive, and obviously a lot of exciting stuff happening.
If I'm talking about automotive, I wonder why that is. I have no idea.
But I'm blown away by some of the stuff that I've seen, and I've also done quite a lot in automotive over the years. But this is taking stuff in a whole new direction. Anyway, it's about getting somebody from that space, from that industry, to come in and craft something together with you. I'm not saying these people aren't doing that, but that's the way that, so be it healthcare or automotive or whatever it is, you get someone in because they really know the pains. And if you can if somebody's reading something and it's like, yes, yeah, but we're doing that. Yes, yeah, but and then they're like, actually, God, that is exactly the challenge that I'm having.
That's real pain point.
Real pain point. And then there's maybe a tease to how they're doing it, or this is what we're working on together now with X company. And, that's the sort of thing that gets the interest. And everyone's short on time. How do you make sure that your content is valuable to them? And, again, not saying that people aren't doing this. I'm just saying this is the way that I've done it. And what I mean is sometimes I think you do have to pay those specialists, consultants, whatever it is. And, it's certainly something that we'll be doing in the healthcare space, because actually, when you talk about doctors talking about their actual daily challenges, and I'm talking in the NHS, I mean, and they're saying actually these are the real kind of problems that I'm facing on a daily basis, and I think this is the solution that could kind of resolve it somehow, but I've got no idea of how to go about and do that. That's the magic. That's when we can actually do something meaningful and working together and creating something good.
So basically, getting to the real pain points, not just like the topics in a presentation that someone higher up said, "Oh, this." Exactly. I've heard that these are some of the problems that we need to.
Yeah, these are the sorts of things that I think you should be hearing about. Because these people are doing it every single day, and I think that's the hardest thing for any sort of consultancy or agencies going into an industry and telling them something that they don't know. So what you need to do is take someone from that industry, learn yourself, and then kind of
completely understand what they're doing. Looking forward, what are some of the things that you expect to happen in the course of opening the UK office of Infinum, in terms of shaping the offering, expanding the team? What are you excited about? And also, what are some things that might worry you just about when looking at the state of things in the world? I mean, for example, you mentioned that you're interested in working more with automotive. They've obviously had a supply chain problem because of the pandemic and stuff like that. Are there some of the things that even as an agency you need to
be aware of?
Yeah.
I suppose going back to the first question, I love your double questions.
Yeah, right.
It's for me, the most exciting thing is being able to be in a position where I only want to work with people that I would want to go and have a pint with, want to go and have a beer with. I think there's been a lot of, so you're thrown together with people that actually they're not, I don't know, there's no chemistry. And I think that kind of comes out, creates a sort of toxic environment. So I want to leave all of that behind. And I think the idea then that, so I'm really excited about that. I'm really lucky that the first guy that I'm kind of working with is a good friend, and we already work well together, and there's a massive level of trust, and so I want to make sure that we can kind of continue that with all the people that we bring on board. And with the third guy that we brought on board, I kind of feel that already, and it's great. I didn't know him, but I could definitely would want to spend time. He's, funny enough, also a massive petrol head, so that there is that. The challenges, of course, this is something that we need to keep an eye on. I'm always slightly cautious about how bad this particular thing is. I think there's a lot of hype in the media at the moment about how bad this particular. Are we talking about the petrol crisis? Are we talking about HGV?
I was meaning chip crisis specifically, but just talking about in general, like as you said, there's a lot of stuff happening. Will that impact? Is this something that you think Infinum and companies like Infinum need to worry about, or founders need to be aware?
Yeah, I think you just always need to be aware, sort of geopolitically, what's happening, and make sure that you're making decisions that are not. I mean, if we jump back, there was around the time of Brexit, that was a really difficult time, because I had a really big team that was very multicultural, and it was the lead up to it was kind of horrible. The actual result was horrendous, and then the aftermath, again, it was just this languishing of not knowing, not only am I not welcome here, but also is it, do I need to start looking for another job? It's this uncertainty. So that was really a difficult time for a lot of people. And, of course, I was just trying to communicate everything I knew, and it was a pretty muddled message coming down. But so I think there's a lot of learnings from that you can kind of take on board. And obviously communication around all of that is key. But moving forward, I think there's trends. So we talk about sort of blended working lives and work-life balance. I think that's probably the biggest thing. There's definitely an expectation now, rightly or wrongly, that people feel if I'm producing, if I'm doing good work, then I should be able to sort of build it around my life in that sense. And I think there's an assumed level that's acceptable, as long as, you're getting the actual job done. So I think, and I guess that's the same here as I understand it. And, it's obviously post-pandemic, that's the way it is. But I'm starting to hear now a backlash of actually, we want you in 5 days a week. And I think that is going to be a big mistake. And people will now value that family or that, however you'd call it, that flexibility between work and personal life as something that actually is much more of a right than it ever has been. So, that's...
So it should be interesting. We hope to see you more in Zagreb then.
Well, I mean, I hope to be here more. And but I know the guys want to be over in London. I know there's other trips that they've got sort of planned elsewhere. And I think... I'm definitely keen to be bringing my team over, and I think there's probably a plan that will come over again before Christmas. I know that I'm going to bring the family over and that sort of thing. So I'll definitely be spending.
Awesome. It was a pleasure having you as a guest.
Thank you very much.
And until we hear about the opening of Infinum office Hvar, which... Yeah, that could happen. Knowing the boys, that could happen. Thank you so much for being our guest, sharing your experience and tips. I hvala vama što ste gledali i slušali Netokracija Podcast. Ako imate kakvih pitanja još, naravno stavite ih u komentarima. Subscribe-te se na YouTube, podcast, platforme, sve moguće od Spotify, Deezera nadalje i vidimo u sljedećoj epizodi Netokracija Podcasta. Ćao!